I'm the Director of Investments and Operations Manager at Gentian Financial. I just wanted to take a couple minutes first before we started to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to come and join us for the first part of our Gentian Education series. So obviously today we'll be talking about retirement. In the future, next year, we'll be doing forums on travel, health, family, charitable giving. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for those as well. You have a couple of items on your table. One is a note sheet for you to take notes during the forum. The second is an evaluation form. If you could just take a couple minutes either during the presentation or after to give us your thoughts on what you enjoyed or what we could improve on, that would be very helpful for us moving forward when we hold more of these events. So today, Chris Doty and Ken Flannery will be here emceeing the event, and thankfully we have some very generous clients who have offered up their time to help share some of their ideas and thoughts on retirement with you. We hope this is an interactive hour and a half, so please feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So please join me in welcoming Chris Doty and Ken Flannery.
Would it have been nice for some of you who retired 3 years beforehand to have had a panel of people you could ask questions about for this upcoming event that you've never been through? What we've wanted to do here is to bring together some of our clients. What I know is we have an incredible base of wisdom and knowledge in this group of clients that you see up here, and many of you in the audience as well. And what we want to do is provide a format with which we can have them help contribute to the questions you have. To those of you who are in retirement, talk amongst each other. So one thing we're about is contribution. You guys are all very generous with that. You have phenomenal experience. And what we find is it's even better when it's shared. I just did a phenomenal event up in on Tuesday in Minneapolis in which we found that the thoughts in the room have a massive impact on the experience. I was able to, with a massive fear of falling, not heights, but falling, stand on top of a 30-foot telephone pole on the size of a plate, about the size of a plate from dinner, climb all the way up myself, get on there, stand on there, turn around 180 degrees, and jump off. My wife was in tears when she saw the video. She knows how big that was for me. So you'll find that with the encouragement of everybody here, with your community that we're bringing together, we found things that are more important. We started with the financial relationship, many of us, and what's turned into a friend relationship, and I almost say a family relationship and a community. What you're seeing up here is just some of those members. We want to bring them to you in a format, in this initial, what I call retirement forum, to say, let's ask them the questions that we want to know before we retire. So some of these people, you'll say, have incredible depth of knowledge. They're going to have some incredible experiences, like I was expecting retirement to be this, but this happened. And I want it to be interactive. So if there's some of you in the audience, too, that have some contribution, feel free. We'll try to keep our contribution, when we do, somewhat concatenated and short. I know it's tough for me because I tend to like to speak. But we're going to keep that short, but we want to make it interactive. So questions you have, comments you have will be very important to this as well. So I'm going to introduce my panel up here just by name first. You may know some of them. You may know each other through coming to different events. But I have a panel up here that's wonderful. So I have John Zorbini, who I've known for probably 20-plus years, maybe 25 years, if you will. And we started a long time ago at Community Memorial, been retired. VP of HR there in many different places around the city. I have Jane Radda, who's a wonderful a client of ours, been around, had some great experience, probably for 20 years as well. Yeah, and a lot of different things that we've faced, and she actually worked with John years ago at Community Memorial, and then through Freighters as well. I have Jan and Michael Ganlon, who are dear friends as well as clients, and they are wonderful. You may have known them from other television items and all as well, but they are great here, and they've got some great contribution they'll add as well here. Known probably Mike for 14 years, 15 years probably just in our neighborhood, and Jan was probably one of the first one to talk to our daughters who were yet to be born. When they were first born, she would walk her dog, and I kid you not, my kids would just immediately like, this dog's sweet. She goes, my dog doesn't usually come up to kids like this. So it's a special thing that Jan has and Mike have with us and even the family. I have Byron Lumens as well. Thank you, Byron. And Byron and I probably met 14 or 15 years ago at a company that's right around here, and there's a warehouse I was just telling Byron about. Byron, that JCPenney thing over there, isn't that where you were and now it's a warehouse for rent? And he says, yes, it is. So it shows you how things change dramatically. But we've been through some phenomenal basis and events in retirement for ourselves as well. And then I've got John over here who was literally at work until he got here again. But guess what? It's not work. I'm going to talk more about that. His contribution is great in many ways. We've known each other and been through quite a bit as well, so we've been shared and celebrating with that. So I've been in the business for 25 years. I know I probably look like I'm 48, which I am, but we've been able to do this for a very long time, and I've been blessed with great wisdom of the clients here. They bring more to us than they ever know, and our goal is to share that here with you. So as we make this interactive, I'll start off by just moderating the questions, some of them that you may want to hear. And I think the biggest thing we start off with is identity. When I retire, what happened with the titles, the people, the social aspect I had to my identity the day I walked out? Maybe I wasn't prepared for that. What's interesting, let me give you one story. My uncle, who's a Navy captain, the day he retired, had Condoleezza Rice at his ceremony, and 4,000 people saluting him, all this pomp and circumstance, everything played. And the day he walked down to the street, he told me this story. One of the most disappointing days of my life was the day after retirement, where when I walk on the street, kids have no idea who I am, nobody salutes me, and I'm just an old guy. Now, at the time, I'm listening to this 15 years ago, going, yeah, well, what does this mean? I get this now, and I'm understanding this. This identity is a big thing we don't talk about. I was the VP of this, I did this, or this was my role, and I was it. And now what am I? What's next, okay? So that's a big part of this. So from the panel, and we can choose anybody across here for yourselves, is there anything that struck you as, did your identity change once you stepped into retirement and away from what you did?
The thing that changed for me was just everyday activity and getting used to not having to be somewhere. And after 45 years of going into my office and doing what I did and practicing, I practiced law for 45 years. And it was like, I felt guilty. I was like, I shouldn't be, you know, I should have something pressing. And I had a plan, so it wasn't like I didn't have things that I wanted to do, but I guess the identity thing would be, I did miss the people that I worked with.
Right.
And my wife pointed out very early on here. I'll let her tell the story.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is really funny. I looked forward to his retiring from the moment we got married. I knew this was going to be great, and I'm right. It is. I love it. But not too long after, he's home every day. Of course, we got the classic, what's for lunch? I said, anything you want? He said, oh, good. And then I left. You know? So, but he figured that out pretty quick. But one day, he handed me this piece of paper with a phone number on. He said, can you get so-and-so on the phone for me, please? And he's in a big hurry. He's going somewhere. And I looked at him and I said, oh, honey, you can do this. I said, people have been dialing phones for a long time. And he's laughing now, but at the moment the look came out, and I said, oh, you miss your staff. He said, I do.
That's outstanding. Thank you.
So I actually have a follow-up question to that. You mentioned, Mike, that you were pressing, like, you thought there was something pressing to do. How did you, when you made the transition, how did you decompress? What were some of the things that helped you decompress and not have to be worried so much about, I need to be here at 10, I got to make this phone call at 11.
I think it's just getting used to not having that kind of pressure. My personality was probably an A-type anyway, so I put pressure on myself sometimes for no reason. But I think just getting used to it more than anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Time was a big key. John, yes.
So when I retired as a corporate official for Wisconsin's largest employer. And when you're a corporate officer, you get really dumbed down. You don't really know how to do anything. That most people would think would be, good to know. And for me, it was one day being responsible for 32,000 employees. And the next day, it was, so how do I get this Word document thing to work? And because I had, in my career, I had Lois for part of my career and Nancy for part of my career, and I wasn't married to either one of these women, by the way. They, as my wife would say, they were my work wives because, at 8 o'clock at night, if I needed something, I just called them at home and said, how do I do this? I need this. I mean, I was always polite and so on. I apologize for calling them at home, on Sunday morning at 7:30. For me, it was after being in that world so long and having everybody do these things for you. I give a lot of presentations. Well, when I was corporate and I wanted to give a presentation, I sat down with the marketing department. I told them what I was thinking of. They sat down with the media department. They put the whole thing together and just kept sending it to me to edit. Well, guess what? It's a lot easier to edit. I had to learn actually how to open PowerPoint to start doing my own. So it was a big adjustment, and my wife, over those first couple weeks, she kept saying the same thing. It was, I'm not Nancy, I'm not Lois. I'm not Nancy, I'm not Lois. I'm Pam. Figure it out.
That's outstanding. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Well, I have a totally different experience because, fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't have anyone doing anything for me.
Right.
So it was all on me.
Right. That's true.
I had thought that I would be retired and spend a great deal of time traveling with my husband, but he passed away in 2010, so it was totally on me. Well, I have a wonderful group of friends, and they are mostly retired, and so for years before I decided, they were encouraging me to actually retire.
Yes.
And they said, we'll keep you busy, don't worry about it, and I have this wonderful group of people that, in fact, today I was at a glass-blowing studio before I came. We meet for coffee every Thursday. There are 15 of us, sometimes 17 of us that are there. So I do encourage you to make relationships with other people because it will definitely make a huge difference in how you spend your time, what you do, and that it's socially satisfying.
Yeah, and especially if something changes. So you had an expectation of what it would be, something changes. The biggest questions I often have, and this is a big one we've been talking about lately, people tell me about their dreams, I'll say, and this one stops them a lot, and if not, then what? Well, I'm planning my husband and I, or my wife and I, we're going to do this, so the question becomes, and if not, then what? So sometimes having a plan for that becomes wildly important, and I think as Jane and I talked a lot, things that happen we weren't expecting. Adjusting to those are big as well. How about, thank you very much for sharing as well. How about for the two of you, maybe what was the biggest, in this case, Byron, the biggest change for you? We prepared for quite a while for this, and I think your identity in both was pretty similar. You weren't married to what you did, but your contribution has remained great in both and on a constant basis. So has it been a transition for you?
Well, I would say that, I would tell you that my identity really wasn't defined by my job. I would say I was a husband, I was a father, I was a brother, I was a son, and that always came first.
That's true.
I enjoyed my working, and I was a computer analyst, writing software and so forth. I enjoyed the company, but that was always further down the list for me. So when I retired, that really wasn't an issue with me because I still had my wife, I still had my friends, I still had my kids, and so forth. So that was not an issue for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about when you retired from professional baseball? Because he actually played for the Cubs, which is quite funny. And he won't tell anybody this, but he was in their farm team, and he's got a uniform from one of the top players that it's pretty funny he tells me about. But when you had to retire from that, because there was a lifetime that you thought maybe this was going to be what it was, right?
Well, that was exciting. After college, I was all set to go to graduate school, and I'd applied, and I was accepted, and was all set to go. I was just going to work as a carpenter that summer, and then the summer draft came along, and wow, I was drafted by the Cubs. So my wife Cindy and I had, 2 weeks to get our stuff packed, and we were off to Bradenton, Florida for the summer to Rookie League. And wow, people talk about their midlife crisis, about not having been able to do the things they dreamed of. Well, I was able to do that when I was 22 years old.
Right.
Played for 3 years until I tore up my knee. But my wife and I tell everybody that, we were on a honeymoon for 3 years. That's right. Florida, back to the Midwest, out to grad school in Arizona, and so forth. So we we had fun, met a lot of interesting people.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that was a big change from
Yes.
from when that ended until what am I going to do?
Yes. Yeah.
And luckily, like Chris said, I found this awesome job at J.C. Penney just across the street here as a systems analyst, and
Yes.
it was outstanding.
Absolutely.
But that's long time ago.
I know.
That's history.
Absolutely. it
I actually
was.
have a follow-up question.
Yeah,
then. So
please, Ben.
knowing Byron a little bit, he has a passion for woodworking. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So my question to you is: that something that you took on as you approached retirement? In retirement, was it always a hobby? Because I think some of us are wondering what we're going to do in retirement. Are we going to follow our hobbies, our passions? What are we going to do? Was that something that was always in you, or is that something you kind of found along the way?
Well, I didn't know that it was in me, but I wanted to try it. I took a woodworking class when I was a sophomore in high school, and I enjoyed that. And then when we bought our first house here in Menominee Falls, the person we bought it from had a table saw, and he made things, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm going to try that. And the first thing I tried, it wasn't like a breadboard or anything. I tried to make a sewing machine cabinet. So,
Wow.
Setting the bar high.
Yeah, yeah.
Setting the bar high. Yeah.
and you still use it, right, Cindy? So
That's awesome.
that's 40 years ago, and it just progressed from there. So it started. I started that not with the intention of, wow, what am I going to do when I retire? But I did it because it was so different than what I did every day, programming a computer. I could come home and I could take a raw piece of wood and I could make something useful and practical out of it. So, and it's been a blessing, really. And
So I have another gentleman here, so his identity hasn't changed much because post-retirement he actually became the president of the International Traffic Association, which is fun. And I think you said something to me that was pretty profound early on, is find something you love to do. And actually, I'll let you tell me, yeah.
There was an article in yesterday's paper, because I was thinking about you. It was about somebody who had a local business or something like that, and he was asked about going to work, and he says, as long as you find something you love to do, I don't go to work every day. I just do what I do because I love doing it, and it's kind of like a hobby. It's
Right.
not that four-letter word called work.
Right.
And I know personally I've failed retirement 3 times. I keep getting asked back.
It's
So
true.
what's
He does.
my identity? Am I a transient? I don't know. I think the thing that's kind of fun is you try to stay relevant, at least if you're continuing to practice what you do. I'm a traffic engineer, so you try to stay on leading edge. And the technology thing and all of that, gets more complicated, and change is bad, but change is good. And so I don't, like today, I was going to go in for a couple hours, and all of a sudden my wife calls at 2:30 and said, "Where the hell are you? We're supposed to be over by Chris." Oh, my God.
That's good.
I'm just grinding away. There's no clock. You don't go checking the clock.
Right,
At least
exactly.
I don't.
Yes.
But I also think about people that I know that couldn't wait for the day they could retire. I mean, they're counting the clock. And what's amazing is a lot of them passed away within 6 months. Now, I don't know what the cause and effect of that is, but it's really a sad picture. So we're kind of blessed. I got to tell you, my wife we're high school sweethearts. We've been doing this journey for a long time. And we just have a lot of fun doing it. 2 nights ago, it was raining out in Elm Grove, and I said, I need some help. So she's out there counting one intersection of cars, and I'm counting the other intersection. I said, I'll buy you dinner.
Exactly which one. And last year, I got to tell you, they celebrated their 50th year anniversary year-long celebration. So it wasn't an event. It was an annual event, meaning it was a year long, literally. So what did you do? So it was a whole year of celebration, which was unique.
Well, our kids, held a little party for us, and, okay, that's good. And I said, nice. And then, it's a formal occasion.
So you enjoyed it.
Your peaks can't be too high and your valleys can't be low. Because that's what happens with high peaks. You fall off into the valley. But I told Susan, here's an itinerary. We're going to sell it. We're going to have, if the Grateful Dead can do it, we can go on tour for a year
Yes.
and celebrate
Yes.
our anniversary. So,
Yes.
unfortunately, or I guess better, fortunately, it's actually 2 years ago, and we're still on tour. But we're fitting work in between. I got a call in Hawaii, 6 o'clock in the morning. A client, hey, Ken, I need some help on this. I said, do you know where I am? He says, no, but can you help me anyway? I said, sure. And then I had a conference call on a picnic bench on the beach. You know, you just work it out, and if you're adding value, it's okay. I would say the other thing that kind of keeps us marching along is we're kind of lifetime volunteers. We followed in our parents' footsteps, and I was president of Brookfield Soccer for 25 years, volunteer thing, build a soccer park, all that kind of good stuff. I'm on these national committees, and Susan says, hey, this is really great. Can I come along? Because she knows everybody, and that's part of our tour. We were in Savannah, we were in New Orleans, we were in the Twin Cities, which wasn't all that great, but we were there. And we're shooting for Hawaii again. So
That's awesome.
it's a great journey. We're having fun. You know, knock on health and all that kind of good stuff.
To kind of put it in your terms, it's been a long, strange trip.
It is a long, strange trip.
If anybody knows, that's the Grateful Dead
Grateful Dead.
statement.
I said that at a thing where I got an award, and everybody said, I know what he's talking about.
Yes, that's awesome. Very much. Very much. Thank you. Any questions? Otherwise, we'll continue to moderate questions as well. Any questions from the audience? I've got all day. I can stand up here and look at you. Good. You'll have questions later. So a couple more that I have. Oh, yeah. Please. Yes, please. Dale.
When to kind of reach that emotional goal of changing life and lifestyles, we've always loved the RV lifestyle, and we always took vacations in a trailer, and we thought, you know, the ideal way to, and we both have developed a real distaste for snow, so we thought the ideal way might be just to try the snowbird thing with our trailer, and what we did was plan a vacation essentially when the retirement date approached, and 2 days literally after I said goodbye to my employer, we jumped in the trailer and headed south and began a vacation. And like all vacations, you never want to see it end. Well, it didn't have to. And probably about 2 or 3 months later, we said, gee, you know, maybe we should think about going home one of these days. But it was a great way to start out the adventure and change into a different lifestyle and a different environment because you were on vacation, and it didn't take too long to learn to really like vacation.
That's outstanding. And so one of the things we're going to do too, and what we're doing with Contribution, is have a program that's really based on travel. So for people who say, what would this traveling lifestyle be? What if I want an RV around for 4, 5, 6 months? What if So we're going to have other programs on this as well, and that's a great lead into it as well. But thank you for sharing that piece too. A couple of the questions that I have, and they came from people both in the audience and others, is what's been the biggest surprise? Is there anything that you guys say, wow, this was a big surprise, I didn't expect this, or something that you say that was quite notable? Anyone? Yeah, please, Byron.
You talked about what you did after you retired. You jumped in your RV. Well, the day after I retired, I got my shovel out and I started removing shrubs in front of my house. I did that for 2 days and dug them out and removed that and did some other things. And then it was like a week later, I went back and had lunch with some of my coworkers. And they said, what have you been doing for this week? I said, well, I've been digging out shrubs and I've been trimming trees. And one of my coworkers said, that doesn't sound like retirement. That sounds like work. But I love it. You know,
that's awesome.
That's one of the things I was looking forward to.
Yeah, it's having time and without pressure to be, hey, I've got time to do this. I don't have to go in.
The other unexpected thing is after 3 months of retirement, I'd lost 15 pounds. Hadn't changed anything. My eating habits, nothing. It was just not sitting at a desk in front of a computer, just by being active.
Mm-hmm. And you could be intentional with it. Thank you. That's awesome. Any other surprises? Yeah, John.
So for me, the big surprise was retiring earlier than I had planned. when you are a corporate official, the smart ones at least have employment agreements. God bless my attorney, because he made sure I had one. And my reporting relationship changed. And one of the specific reasons I went to work for this particular employer was I wanted to report directly to the CEO. And it changed. And it triggered an out in my employment agreement that allowed me to walk away with a couple of years of financial security. But I remember, longevity in my family is not good. My father died at 61, his two brothers died at 59 and 63, my sister died at 67. I walk in and my doc just looks at me and goes, "Glad to see you again this year, John." And I had always planned to retire early, but it hit me a couple of years earlier than I had planned. And I remember, my wife and I celebrated, the same day that this was all taking place by having tea at the English Room downtown, and then on the way home, I called Chris, and I said, "So I've got good news, and I don't know if it's bad news, but I have good news." I said, "I think I just retired," and like probably everybody else, "Hey, do I have enough money to do this?" And he said, "Yeah, you're fine." And my wife kept saying, "I think he's lying to you." And I was like, "No, okay." But Chris said, "Hey, but come over because I want to talk to you about some other ideas." So here's what I tell you the kind of the prelude to this, because the big surprise for me was how marketable the knowledge I had accumulated over 30 years as a corporate official in my area. I was a chief human resources officer and did a lot of work in leadership. And I remember in Chris's office, he said, "John, you're really marketable, and people will pay a significant amount of money to have you individually coach them on how to be better, stronger leaders." And I was like, "Really? I wouldn't pay me. Why would anybody else pay me?"
Seriously, you should have seen the look on his face. He kind of sat there like,
"What?
Are you speaking English?"
Yeah. Who are you talking? I'm in the room. And then he said, "And I think that you could probably, make this much money a year." I started laughing at him. I was like, "Dude, really, I don't know what you're doing for lunch, but you should really stop it." And so, so the surprise for me was that this knowledge that we've all gained over the course of our career, you may not realize it, but it's more than most people have. And if you know how to market it and how to channel it and how to leverage it, I'm not looking to make corporate money again as a retiree, but I do, it's really nice, that for me anyways, it's kind of this personal goal of not touching the retirement money. God bless you. Not having to touch any of this retirement money, for as long as I possibly can, so that I can pass this money through my trust to my children and to my grandchildren. And so my surprise was I had this marketable talent that I didn't know that I had. And my guess is that all of you do too. Mm-hmm. And it's just trying to figure out how to leverage it.
Yeah, and also what happens with that too is, do we want to be paid for it or not? Is it something we want to do on a go-forward basis? Because as we've talked with Ken, with John, so what they're doing, even if it's something, it's work. Some of us have a job and we've done what we had to until we didn't have to do it anymore. Okay? I don't have to do that now. I can pursue being a pumpkin farmer or whatever when I retire. Okay? I get that. But then there's some people, and I include myself in this, who are really blessed to be in what they should be. And I'll do this my entire life. So what does retirement look like for me? It's kind of looking at it. I love it. Absolutely love it. But by the way, how have I learned this? From all of you who've been through here. So really finding that pre-retirement, what do you love? Make sure you concentrate on that. It becomes a really, really big part of this piece as well. Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you, John, for sharing. Surprise anybody else? Like to share a surprise?
I think a couple things have surprised me and my wife. One is in continuing to do what I do, all of a sudden I'm looked at differently by my colleagues. One, it's that old guy. Okay, I can't deny that, right? So that's fine. And then it's like, but when you have something to say, the respect they give of your knowledge or experience, and they say, well, we better listen to that. And you also have some freedom to say things. I went to, my kids thought I was crazy. 2 weeks ago, I flew out on a Saturday morning to Phoenix, and I flew back that night. And my kids would say, what the heck are you doing? That's the most stupid thing in the world. Did Mother go? I said, no, she didn't go. And I had put a proposal together because I said something a year earlier at a meeting of this traffic engineering group about they wanted to establish an endowment. I said, well, that's not very meaningful. Who would want to donate to that? What if you did this? I said, that'd be kind of compelling. And I didn't hear anything. And I said, okay, well, they're listening to the old guy, right? A year later, I get a phone call. Hey, Ken, remember what you said at that meeting a year ago? You want to put something together, and we're going to act on it. So somebody was listening. Surprised the dickens out of me. So I fly out there, and I had this thing kind of, not greased, but, you know, the executive board approved it and all that kind of good stuff. They had several committees. It was about diversity in our profession. And the diversity committee said that's a great idea and so on. So I'm at the board of directors to present this thing. And 11 o'clock, click, okay, let's talk about it. So you give them a little summary. And I got this one board member. I know who he is. He's a naysayer. He said, well, it's going to cost money. And I said, well, yeah, that's all part of it. And what about you can only do one a year? It's about giving a minority scholarship in transportation. And I said, yeah. And then after a couple more questions, I said, you know what? You can talk the talk, but unless you're willing to walk the walk, shit or get off the pot. And all of a sudden the discussion stopped and they approved it unanimously. But I think having been around and all this kind of good stuff gave me the latitude that they were willing to accept and listen to that comment and move forward.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, one thing we find, too, is the collective wisdom in the room from those who've retired and left work or who haven't left is massive. So what you're finding here is using that appropriately becomes wildly important. Don't underestimate what you've learned so far or how you can use it on the go-forward basis, because here's a big issue. Anybody see this? I don't often look at this, but one of my teammates brought this to me. It's the cover of Money magazine. And there's a yoga instructor on here, wonderfully in shape, standing there in a yoga pose like a tree or whatever, and she is 100 years old. She teaches yoga in New York City. She charges $175 an hour for people to come in and learn how to teach yoga. She's 100 years old. There's a gentleman in here who's 102, I think it is, and he wins all of the marathons he's in because in his age group, there's pretty much... yeah, exactly. So how many are there? Yep. But he could run it in 3 days, he still wins. But as you go through it, here's what I'm noticing. What I thought, and what my clients have said they've thought is, with longevity, they didn't realize that at the ages they were at, vitality would still be there. I've got vital 85-year-olds who stopping isn't an issue. Staying healthy, exercising, means that we live longer and healthier. And strangely enough, they're finding some statistics that are saying, actually, we live longer, healthier, and die quicker. Which a lot of my clients said, yeah, that's something I'm looking for. I want to live longer, healthier, and when I'm done, I'm done. I don't suffer towards the end. That's all of us. When you start looking at longevity, retiring for 40, 50 years, some of this guy is a World War II pilot still. He trained other pilots. You start looking at what he does, and the contribution remains. I think what you had said before about Ken, and I see this because, and Ken can speak to it too, if we don't have something to look forward to, that's where we can run into a very tough time. We have to have something we're always looking forward to. The stories in here are consistent.